renewable projects. We've even got a globally recognized eco-village. You know, we've got a huge amount of skills and experience in Moray. We've got the right tools. And we need the tenacity, and I'm sure there's many people on this call, but I know people that have devoted their entire lives to tackling climate change. And yeah, many of you are in the room here. And I realized that if we, with those qualities, with those tools, actually dealing and tackling climate change in Moray is inevitable, like Daisy learning to walk. It's just an inevitability. And it starts with baby steps, of course. So today we're going to hear about some of the very important baby steps that have been taken since our first meeting with Dr. Martin Valenti. And we're gonna, so as a reporting back, it's a hearing what's happened, what's been going on as we take this momentous leap from crawling to walking to running. My name is Edward Fitzel. I work for tsiMORAY. tsiMORAY is an organisation with the remit to support the growth and development of the third sector in Moray itself. Some of the feedback that we got back from the first meeting was, I remember there's some really great feedback, so thank you very much to those of you who completed the survey. One of the things that really struck me was somebody mentioned that the assembly's got to have a clear purpose, we'll have a clear aim that we're trying to achieve. So we've had a little bit of a reflection of that, and we've come up with our intention for this assembly. So we really intend to hold the space for a cross-sector melting pot to support you to tackle and take action on climate change, leading up to COP26 and beyond. So there's a few ways that we're intending to host these meetings to do that. We're going to inspire. So we've got lots of ideas for speakers like Dr. Martin Valenti that we can bring in to hear different perspectives about what people are doing. And of course, being on Zoom, we can actually do that from all around the world. So we're going to hopefully inspire new ideas and new thinking. We'll create the space for sharing. So we're going to hear hopefully from some of you today about your inspirations, your plans, your actions that you're taking, tackling climate change in Moray. And we're also going to use this space to connect people together. So at each meeting, there'll be some sort of opportunity for connecting in smaller groups and making connections, which will hopefully lead on to new projects, new ideas as we tackle climate change in Moray. So I think many of us I certainly was, but many of us were inspired by the words of Dr. Martin Valenti, who joined us at the very first Climate Assembly. And he really expanded my mind on what was possible potentially being the first area in Scotland to get to net zero in the long journey to tackling climate change. So I hope that's clear. That's our sort of first ideas on what we intend as tsiMORAY to hold this space. But really the action, the taking action will clearly happen outside of this room, and it's down to all of us to make that happen. So to hear from one of our first steps that has been taken since the first meeting, I would like to invite Lee, who I can actually see on my screen, so I'm glad to see that he's here. Lee McGrath there from Reboot, to give us an update on what happened at the Moray Social Enterprise Network environmental subgroup that we had last week. I'll hand it over to Lee.
Thanks, Edward. Yeah, guys. Hi, everyone. It will be brief. Don't worry. As it happens, I wasn't actually taking notes at either the forum or our little conversation with Lucy afterwards. So anyone that was at that forum, please, by all means, pipe up if you think I've missed something vitally important to the meeting we had. Yeah, it was a very inspiring meeting. There was a cross section of organisations and individuals representing environmental causes in Moray, including transport, housing, waste and recycling, conservation, retail, energy, consultancy, and the public sector. So yeah, it was a great mix of people all coming together to have a chat through where we were going forward and what we were doing as a forum, as a social enterprises. Whilst there weren't all social enterprises at the forum, I think that kind of fitted in quite nicely as well. There was a lot of talk around the new hub, which was fantastic, and giving insight into what the guys are up to, and I think we might get an update on that today as well. But that was good to get a bit more detail on what was going on with the guys down there. That's Energising Moray, the climate hub. Then general discussions around issues and stuff going on in the local area with regards to the environment and climate change. We didn't quite squeeze in as much detail as we'd hoped with regard to how the forum was going forward, but we did manage to get to the end and get a bit of an answer that I think everyone agreed with, which is the MSEN Environmental Network and Forum really is there as an advisory group. It's there to hopefully have people in the room that have got a bit of expertise in various areas of climate change and can offer support to each other and then potentially others. Off the back of it, myself and Lucy had a brief conversation on the phone just to try and pick it apart a little bit further, and it's obviously something we'll discuss at the next forum, just to see how it kind of shapes up. One of the things we were having a chat about that I think is quite interesting was, well, firstly, and I think it was mentioned at the forum as well, is we don't want to repeat what other things, you know, other organizations, other people are doing. So it's very much a case of not, you know, you guys are all here today as a Climate Assembly. We don't want to be doing exactly the same things and discussing exactly the same things specifically. We might want to expand on certain things that are discussed at this meet and then go forward with it. So maybe potentially using this as a platform to shape the MSEN environmental forums going forward, at least until COP26, and then maybe look at expanding it into you know, other areas thereafter. One of the exciting things for me was actually something that didn't actually come directly out of the discussions, but something that Edward shared with Lucy and myself, because I was being a bit of a stickler for what is the vision for the environmental forum, and I'll just pop it in. This kind of summarizes it, and I think it's quite nice. You'll see it in the chats there. The purpose of the environmental MSEN is to support the growth and development of enterprising activity and tackle climate change in Moray. Beautifully put, Edward. Beautifully put, thank you. And that kind of you know, other than that, I think we kind of got to the point where we know what we're doing. There was a bit of discussion around social enterprise. There were sort of grant-driven organizations and trading-driven organizations in the meeting, and there was a bit of discussion about how we can support each other, potentially giving a bit of advice around how social enterprises work and the benefits they have towards the environment, and also how other organizations that maybe aren't in a position to be able to trade and generate income can be supported potentially by social enterprises, the likes of B corporations and others. So yeah, that was about it. I don't know if anyone else has got anything they want to say about that, Edward, but that was kind of the gist of it. It was very positive. It was great to see everyone, and I'm looking forward to the next meet.
Great, thank you so much for that update, Lee. Yeah, and I was in the meeting as well, and that's a great summary. And yeah, as you say, Lee, that little statement that we came up with did happen outside of the meeting, so I suppose we'll take that into future meetings for conversation. But I love the idea of that being a space where anybody that wants to learn how they can engage with enterprising activity to tackle climate change that's a space of expertise that they can come to, as you say, Leah, an advisory group. Brilliant. Thank you so much for that. So another baby step that I wanted to share with you, but baby being small, but also remember very important, was some people from the Moray Council, Highlands and Islands Enterprise, and also tsiMORAY met last week to just to start the conversation around this question, which I think was coming strongly from the last assembly. How do we get effective cross-sector collaboration in Moray to tackle climate change? So we had, so there's not, I can't report a huge amount back, but what I can say is that conversation has happened and it started. The Moray Council have got an important meeting on the 10th of March relating to their climate change strategy. And so that the group that has met will meet again to discuss what the next actions will be. And so we'll be in a good position, I think, to report back more about what's happening at that cross-sector conversation at the next Moray Climate Assembly. So that's our second step. And thirdly, I would like to hand over, I'm hoping Joan Megson is here. Oh yes, I can see her, Joan Megson. Alec Walker gave us a great update on what was happening with energising Moray in the first assembly in February. And Joan's very kindly offered to give us an update on what's happened since then, so over the last month. Joan.
Okay, thank you, Edward. Yes, really, Alex gave an excellent update on energising Moray, and I want to fill you in a bit more on what's happening on the hub side of it. As you know, we're writing a business plan for a Moray Community Climate Action Hub based on an expression of interest we sent to the Scottish Government last year. And we're in the middle of writing the business plan. I would like Steve Fowles to wave because he's writing it with me. He's somewhere here. And at the moment, the business plan is to set up a hub with office and staff, paid staff, to actually coordinate activities, but also to help us get to a zero carbon Moray, accelerate progress to zero carbon Moray in a just transition. So to help communities with transport, with heating, help fuel poverty, etc. So what's happened since then? We've set up a subgroup to help write the business plan. And on the subgroup, there are people from local green businesses, renewable businesses in Moray, because it has to be a whole cross section. There's businesses, there's HIE, we have Louise from Moray Council, we have third sector organisations, social enterprises, etc. And it was a very useful meeting that last week that Lee just summarised, because now I feel we've got support of social enterprises as well, and we'll get input from some great social enterprises into the business plan. So we had the first meeting of the business plan, and we talked about the aims a little bit. What we want to do is get a researcher, project manager, and some researchers and communicators, because we want to help communities and individuals by proactively approaching them with renewables plans for communities. And following on what the Scottish Government published in January this year, we want to make replicable plans so we can come up with a plan for renewables for, say, coastal communities in Moray or rural communities where different types of renewable solutions are most relevant. And the timing is that we hope to write the business plan by mid-April, and the timing is such that we'll by then we'll have the 3 pilot LHEES studies from Moray Council, and that stands for Local Heat and Energy Efficiency something beginning with S. And they're looking at similar communities, so we see that as a sort of fairly crucial backbone of the project, so that will be very interesting. We also want to be a place, and that's why we want to have people who communicate out to schools, to universities, to communities. We want to be a place where people can come along and say, well, what can I do? What can I do? Or how can I help keep my house? And then we're not we want to help people, like REAP, help people rather than take over any of their jobs. So it would be a sort of passing people on place. It would be a place to coordinate and put people in touch with the right social enterprises and third sector organisations. So the objectives are more resilient communities, less fuel poverty, a renewable transport policy that relies on electric transport. Also, it was really good seeing Trees for Life last week, and it would be grand to come up with a strategy for improving biodiversity, carbon sequestration. That's absolutely crucial as well. And one of the very important things that we want to come out of this is local green jobs, because these renewables projects will come up with a huge number of green jobs. And if we can come up with a scheme, we know how many are coming, there's a pipeline of projects coming, then investment for local businesses and training and apprenticeships becomes much, much easier. I could go on for hours, but I'm trying very hard not to. So I might stop there, but I would say if anybody, we've made a little PowerPoint to sort of show why we think something like this is necessary. You look at Moray and you have a huge amount of renewable resources, and why do we not have a lot of community energy plans? So there's a little PowerPoint, so if anyone wants to see it, they're very welcome. And I don't know, can I attach PowerPoints to the file here? Shall I try?
We can forward that round. We can forward that round later.
Fine, and you have it, Edward, don't you?
Yeah. We'll send it around. Joan, I just wonder whether are you open to just a few questions, just to see if there's any questions on there?
Yes, of course, of course.
So if you did have any questions, there's the reactions tab down at the bottom of your screen. If you press that and then click on raise your hand, I'll see that you're there if anybody's got any questions. But whilst you're thinking about it, I just want to say just how excited I am to see the work that's going on with Energising Moray, and also tsiMORAY is looped in and part of helping to develop the business plan. And yeah, the thing that I'm very aware of is this need for dedicated paid resource on this, and it seems like that, I mean, that's, as you've said, that's your intention, is to get that paid staffing there, and I think that's when things can really start to happen effectively. So it's fantastic that you're working away on that.
Sorry, I just thought, can I say something about funding? Because another reason for going for mid-April is it's as soon as possible, but we think there's a possible opportunity to become one of the Scottish Government's pilot climate action hubs. So we're aiming to do that, and we're talking to Richard Lochhead so he knows where we are. If we don't do that, and we'd look for funding for 2 years, if we can't get that, then we start looking for funding from other sources as quickly as possible. And Steve Fowles has just come up with a very good point. The quick win, high visibility community microgrid project. Yeah, that would be excellent. We'll try and start doing things as quickly as possible, even before we can set things up. So we're looking for sort of early projects as well, before everything gets set in stone and the office is manned. And
yeah, great, that's fantastic. Thanks so much, Joan. It doesn't seem like there's any questions for you, so I will move on. And actually, your comment on funding there is a nice segue to the thing I wanted to talk about next. So some of you may have come across it. We did a press release. There's a group that tsiMORAY facilitates and holds called the Moray Funders Forum, which we work together with Adam Family Foundation and the Gordon and Nina Baxter Foundation. So the three organizations co-host and bring together the Moray Funders Forum. It's a group of grant-making bodies who have an interest in making grants specifically in Moray. Some are based and dedicated in Moray, others are national. For example, we've got the National Lottery Community Fund that sits on the Moray Funders Forum. So it's a whole mix of different sizes of organizations. And in January, we had a meeting that specifically looked at environment. So we had a conversation all around what's going on in Moray, and to open the funders' eyes to what's going on in Moray in terms of the environment, and also just to raise the agenda. So at our last meeting, I told them about the Moray Climate Assembly, and some of them are actually on this call today and were on the previous call. And what I wanted was just a statement of support for this work that we're doing. And most of the funders on our forum have got sufficiently broad remit to be able to support environmental projects. And they were very supportive of the work of this assembly. As I say, so some are here, some representatives are here today. And in that vein, I think there's, what I would like to see is just funding applications coming up. They're willing to see and review environmental projects that come out of this assembly. One thing that is in the pipeline is what we're calling a funding clinic. And we're going to theme that on environment and sustainability. So if you keep an eye on our newsletter, you'll see some information about what that means. So at some point, we'll be getting some promising projects together that are focused on environment and sustainability, and then having a conversation with members of the Moray Funders Forum to see how we can improve those projects, strengthen those projects, and get them funded. So that is coming down in the pipeline. And also, whilst we're talking about funding, I just want to say, if you haven't seen it already, the National Lottery Community Fund Climate Action Fund has reopened. So a little while ago, I asked it to be reopened. I like to think that it reopened because I asked, but I don't think the two things were related. But nevertheless, it has reopened, which is fantastic news. So actually, I've got a link which I'll put into the chat. So have a look at that fund if you haven't already, and see if it can help any of your projects. Those are the updates that I wanted to tell you. So as I said, they're baby steps. They're small and yet significant. There will be lots more to share with you, I'm sure, at the next meeting, which we're aiming to do in end of April, early May. But for now, I wanted to open the space just to see if there's any inspirations, projects, plans, anything I've missed from what I've said. Does anybody want to share what they've been doing or the conversations they've been having? And again, if you press the reactions button, it should bring up a tab and you can raise your hand, and then I'll see that you're wanting to come in.
Transitioning away from the carbon-based economy. Our economy is really, really fully engaged with the fossil fuel industry. And to transition away from that, there's various steps. One of the steps is grant funding for the projects, but ultimately, we've got to get into a position where there's a carbon tax. So the burning of fossil fuels actually costs. And one of my favourite little sayings is that we're all effectively fly tipping our carbon. We're dumping it into the atmosphere. And until there's a cost to doing that, renewables don't stand on their own. So what I'm saying is that as a grouping of people, we've really got to press for a change in our economic environment so that carbon is out there and is something that is taxed, and when we burn it, there's a consequence to that. Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for bringing that in, Steve. It's certainly one of my long-standing bugbears is the economics and externalities. It's quite a thing. Yeah, any more comments, thoughts, inspirations, actions that you're taking, conversations that you've had since the last meeting? Gordon, and also just to say the raise hand facility, I think for some people is included in the right hand bar under participants. I think that's might be where it appears as well, but over to Gordon.
Yeah, just something that's come to me is the importance of joined up thinking. It's been mentioned a lot. It was mentioned by Martin Valente about the collaboration between industry and third sector and local authorities and government. Just an example of that is there's a new housing development being proposed. I think it's for affordable housing in Forres, quite a large development. And a friend of mine has read it, and he pointed out to me that the parking provisions are there's a lot of cars. I can't remember what the allocation is, but it's a lot of cars per unit. And what he was pointing out to me, and we discussed, was that it didn't look like there's the joined up thinking of a brand new development of a lot of houses in Forres. There's the future's electric cars. We're moving towards mainly electric by 2030, and it didn't seem to be thought into the planning process there, how to do that, how to have charging points set up, and how to, particularly for me, I'm the manager of Moray Car Share. The possibility of encouraging car sharing, so you require fewer parking places and you're producing fewer cars because the housing estate is set up from the start to encourage in a way that encourages that. For example, by shared charge points where the car club cars can charge, and solving the problem of how do people living in flats get an electric car charged if they don't have a garden and a driveway where they can connect to their own house. So that's just an example of joined up thinking, and how can we do that? Is it through this the cross-section collaboration group you were talking about, Edward? Where could things like that come in? How do we actually do that? Ensure that happens.
Yeah, thanks, Gordon. It's fascinating to hear you talk about that, because I'm 500 miles away from Moray at the moment, but there's a housing estate being built up just up the road, and there's these massive houses going up all over the place, and not one of them has got a charging point. And I'm thinking in 5-10 years time, yeah, so they're all going to have to be retrofitted. But to answer the question, I would absolutely see that sort of issue in the course of time being able to go into these discussions that we're having, these cross-sector conversations that we're starting to have. So it's all about effective planning, isn't it? So absolutely, I think that these sorts of issues will come into the mix. And as I say, we're still in this sort of baby steps and falling over and standing up again time. But in the course of time, my hope certainly is that there's a place that we can bring those sorts of issues.
Could I have raised my hand a couple of times, but
sorry, I didn't see it yet.
Sorry, no, that's okay.
And then there's Chris as well.
It was just to say that there's a good example of good practice from a housing association. Well, a couple, I mentioned it at the meeting, just to go your point about the electric charging points. So Osprey Housing, they set up a couple of electric charge points with co-wheels as well, with the electric cars in Elgin. as a pilot project funded through this, I think it was a Scottish Government fund. So that's happening. They're now looking at trying to keep it going themselves. They did have two cars there, but it looks like only one will be viable, although obviously it's been in the year of COVID, so not exactly a brilliant thing. And then also the Grampian Housing are putting in Tesla batteries as a virtual power station in Moray as well. So that's through the innovative the Carbon Challenge Fund. I can't remember the name of it. It's got a really unrememberable title, but I know that local housing associations and the Moray Council are applying for some pilot projects under that project. So there are some good examples in Moray going on, and yeah, I couldn't agree more about the it's great that we work with the housing associations on the Warmer Moray group at REAP, and it's good to hear the good practice going on, external, internal wall insulation, this virtual power station idea, some really innovative stuff going on. Just need more of it. So, thank you.
Great, thanks very much, Anne, for that. And yeah, really great to have this space as well to share examples of good practice that's going on. Okay, is there any other thoughts or comments? We've got Mick Drury. Mick.
Good morning. I'm involved with a fledgling green space project here in Forres, and we've just set up a small trust. We're managing an area of woodland, some of you will know, above Sanka Loch, and the adjacent fields as well. We've got a very early idea about a community food growing project there. So it's good to hear about the potential funders forum and how we might link into that. More generally, though, I think what Moray could do with is, I mean, my particular interest is in the biodiversity and green space management, potential nature-based solutions, and yeah, if there could be some funding secured towards progressing those ideas in Moray, I think that would be really good. As far as I know, the council, for instance, doesn't have an ecologist. There's no local biodiversity action plan. There's not even a wildlife sites register in Moray. So I think there's a lot of potential there for, yeah, working on all of those ideas and drawing up plans and proposals for how we can improve our green space management, both for wildlife and also for carbon.
Great, thank you, Mick. And it just occurs to me when you're speaking. So first of all, the Moray Climate, sorry, getting all my forums mixed up. The Moray Funders Forum is absolutely looking forward to welcoming environmental projects to the funding clinic that I mentioned. So perhaps there's a project there that you want to bring to that space. And it also occurs to me that I hope part of what this assembly can do is to give people a sense of agency. So if you see a need, that we can start sort of making these things happen, and it can start just by, like you've done there, Mick, is just identifying a need and just starting a conversation. So I'll bring Fiona in. Fiona's got a hand up.
Update from High and some internal conversations and discussions that I've been having since the last assembly. So High is collaborating with the Scottish Enterprise and the South of Scotland Enterprise and Scottish Government, looking to take a stand at COP26. So I guess there's going to be real opportunity there to showcase Moray, because there's great things happening already. But the decision about stands is taken by the UK government, and we won't know that until May. Came up with some interesting figures as well, just from our own local office. During lockdown and working from home, We've reduced staff mileage by 57,000 miles over this period of time, and so that's a reduction of equivalent of 15 tons of carbon emission. So that really strengthens the staff survey that's been done, that we all want a blended approach going forward, and working from home almost becomes a norm for us. We've also created a cohort of climate challenge champions throughout the organisation. That's about 40 of our staff. So they've just been undertaking training at the moment. So that will help cascade, further down through the organisation.
Great. Thank you, Fiona. Thanks so much. Yeah, it's fantastic to hear that those updates, and the mileage is incredible. I mean,
it's incredible.
I've noticed it myself. I don't think I've filled up the car since September last year. I don't think I've put any fuel into it. It's incredible. It's great for the wallet. So yeah, great.
And
Thanks so much.
If you multiply that round 8 area teams,
yeah,
especially Argyll and the islands, and some of those, where people are travelling long distances just to get back and forth to work. So
yeah.
Amazing.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. So Chris did have his hand up earlier, and I think he might have tech problems. So I just want to read out what he's put into the chat. So Chris says, Moray Council outdoor learning. Following first meeting, I attended a learning for sustainment event. Some great stuff going on in Education Scotland. In keeping with the Baby Steps theme, we're planning an outdoor learning festival with a theme of conservation. So thanks very much for that update, Chris. That's really good stuff. Fabio, you've got your hand up.
Yes, just a heads up that as a TSI Scotland network, we're investigating the potential to putting a request in for a stand at COP26, and in conversations with Senscott, and if we do succeed in that, then there may be openings to showcase some of the stuff coming up from Moray. That's not to say that we may not want to do something Moray specific as an assembly.
Great, thank you, Fabio. Any other updates, thoughts, comments? Roger Dudner, yeah.
Yes, to say that the Findhorn community is continuing to explore the feasibility of setting a target of becoming net zero by 2030. And we are seeking funding to support that initiative. Also to say that I just noticed this morning that the Global Eco Village Network, which is also located in our neighborhood, the headquarters that is, are also planning to have significant representation at COP26. And at the moment are collecting a whole raft of films which have been made about eco villages worldwide for exhibition there. And I also noticed that we have, I think Joran Weekland is with us this morning, and he's the man who has been sort of overseeing our carbon footprint community assessments for the past several years. And I don't know whether he wants to say anything or not, but now would be a good moment.
I didn't catch the name of that person, but there's an invitation there.
Joran Weekland.
Joran. Yeah, sorry, Joran. Yeah.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Over to you.
Just to add to what Roger said, we are just now collecting data for doing an assessment of the carbon emissions that we had for 2020. So a survey has it's just published today, where we ask people to fill in their personal data and all data from the businesses we have around here, which is also part of the community. So that is what's going on right now. And maybe you have mentioned that, Roger, also earlier, that we had established an offsetting service here. So anyone who wants to offset their carbon emissions can do that from that website.
Great, thank you very much, Joran. Yeah, and lots of learning, I think, going on there that can be fed into this assembly over the course of time, I would think. Okay, thank you so much, everybody, for those updates, those thoughts, those comments. We will make sure that there's a space at each of these events for that sort of update and sharing of information. I want to just find my notes. Just so the next meeting, we are aiming for the end of April, beginning of May, and Lucy Morrison, my colleague, and I have got a conversation with somebody on Thursday. I won't say the name, but if we pull it off, it's going to be a really fantastic event. So it's a speaker on the well-being economy, and I think I would certainly imagine that it will check our first intention to inspire you for taking action and inspiring new ideas. So Lucy and I are trying to set that up for the next meeting. As soon as we've got that speaker or another speaker lined up, we will put that date out so that you can put it into your diary. So as I say, expect that to be towards the end of April, beginning of May. I mentioned already that the Climate Action Fund has reopened. Do have a look at that. And you can also, if you're signed up to our newsletter, we have a section at the beginning, which is all about funding. So keep an eye on that for updates on funding. And if you join this Slack workspace, which is dedicated to this assembly space for sharing information and continuing the conversation outside of this meeting, I do keep that up to date with environmental, climate-related funding opportunities. So I appreciate it's another platform to have a look at, but maybe if you sign up and maybe just check it once a week even, you're very welcome to do so. We'll email around how to get onto that. One other thing I just wanted to mention is tsiMORAY is hosting our annual conference called Join the Dots, Shifting Perspectives. That's on the 24th of March. We've got a fantastic keynote speaker lined up called Cormac Russell, who some of you may be aware of. He really champions the asset-based community development approach, which is putting people in the driving seat of their own solutions and their own service provision. And I think it's a theme that just fits so nicely with this forum, which for me is all around agency and being empowered to take action on tackling climate change in our area. So I've just put a link in the chat to that event. So do sign up and join us on that. And what else do I have to tell you? I think that's it. So that's the formal part of the meeting complete. There's an invitation now for anybody that has the time and would like to stay to go into unfacilitated breakout spaces, which you can self-select. So we have set up different meeting rooms on different themes, and you can just move yourself into the different themes and start having conversations. And so we've set them as recycling and upcycling, food, transport, biodiversity restoration to include land and sea, renewable energy, and also a general discussion group if you don't really fancy going into any of those other spaces. So you're very welcome to remain on the call, and you can put yourself into those those spaces and continue the conversations, which perhaps will be in a smaller group and more focused on something that you're particularly interested in. As I say, they'll be unfacilitated and we won't feed back into this space. But if anything interesting does come out of those conversations, it'd be great to either share it on the Slack workspace or to bring it into our next assembly, as I say, end of April, early May.